Welcome to Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237 Teamsters. Today, our very special guest is Mario Cilento, President of the New York State AFL-CIO. New York State AFL-CIO is the largest federation in our country, and it has 2.5 million members. 1 out of every 7 union members belong to the New York State AFL-CIO. Mario, welcome to Reaching Out.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Now, you were just elected not too long ago to the New York State AFL-CIO's president's position. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what that was like?
Well, I'll tell you, I worked at the State AFL-CIO for 19 years before I became president. I started out doing public relations. I served as chief of staff for the last 12 years before I became president. And it was, so I sort of knew what I was getting into. But until you become president and you sit behind that desk and you recognize that you have the final decision on things, it's a little bit of a transition. But I have to tell you, it's been great getting around the state. As you said, we have 2.5 million members. 1 out of every 7 members in the country comes from the state of New York. We have 3,000 local affiliates. So really, for the last year, it's been making sure that everybody understands, that 2.5 million members that we have, it's a great number, but it doesn't mean anything unless we're all working off the same page, the same play sheet. And that's really been the message for this last year, getting out there and letting people feel like they have pride of ownership in this movement. And that was really, the first big challenge. And everybody's really, I think, come together in a way over this last year through the legislative session. We had a great and successful political season this year where Labor really, the endorsed candidates of the Labor movement won, and I think it was in this state 90% of the time, which is it's a tremendous number if you think about it. So it's really been a great year, and I'm looking forward to another 4 years in this office.
Mario, you've come into your position under the most, I would say, dire circumstances for the labor movement. It's not a good time to be a labor leader, yeah. And we're always under attack. Right. And you must have said, what have I got myself into? Well, the attacks across this country and in the state and city. Right. Have just been astronomical.
Well, you know what it is? I think what we have to recognize as a movement is this. Those attacks are never going to stop. Our opponents and our adversaries can outspend us 8-1, 10-1, 20-1 on legislative campaigns, political campaigns, even contractual campaigns. They've really banded together. But I'll tell you, in this state, historically, when we've been able to join together and fight back collectively as a movement, we're able to win more often than not. And that's really, I think, shown through in some of the legislation we've had passed this past year. And it was certainly shown on Election Day this past year where the Labor's endorsed candidates, as I mentioned, won at astronomical rates. So, yeah, is it something difficult to get into? It is. But I think also it's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us who believe in this movement and who understand that, this labor movement stands for giving a voice to those who need it. And that's what this movement is about. And anybody who's into this is, at the very core, we're all just trying to help people. We're just trying to improve everyday lives of working men and women. So is it a challenge? Sure it is. But the fact of the matter is, I think that it really furthers and solidifies your resolve when you recognize that, you can do great things when people come together. And in this state, like I said, we have 2.5 million members. And I think they're recognizing that the only way we're going to be successful is if we're unified and in solidarity on the issues and initiatives that affect working men and women.
I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237 Teamsters. Our special guest is Mario Cilento. He is the New York State AFL-CIO's president, and we are here discussing issues pertaining to labor. And one issue, actually there are 2 issues I want to speak to you about. The first one is very pressing. It is the school bus strike. I want you to tell us everything that you know about the school bus strike. Give us your perspective. Why it happened, what's going on, and what do you think is going to happen in the future?
I'm going to tell you, Greg, it's a shame that it's come to this. I mean, this is a manufactured crisis brought on by Mayor Bloomberg. This didn't have to happen. This is based on what's called employee protection provisions, which allows for there to be a master seniority list so that when contracts are bid out, whoever gets the contract can take the most experienced workers, drivers. So that means that it's not even about the union protecting their members. When a contract is let out to bid and one contractor loses a bid, those workers get on the list. So it could be a non-union worker who's the next qualified, or a union worker. It does not have to be a union member. So this is about keeping the most trained and experienced workers on the job. And the situation is the mayor keeps talking about how this is illegal. Greg, it is not illegal. The Court of Appeals ruling 2 years ago dealt specifically with pre-kindergarten children. And it was ruled at that time for that particular piece that they couldn't provide these in the contracts because the Department of Education decided not to talk about the costs involved and the relative actions as a result of it. If the Department of Education had said these are the costs involved, and in fact there could be work stoppages, then it would not have been declared illegal. It was selective on the Department of Education's part not to put that in. As a result of that, they ruled that these were illegal. In that particular case, that's 1/6 of the workforce. The other 5/6 are not covered by that, but the mayor continues to say it's illegal. The fact of the matter is there has never been a legal case or a legal decision that said you couldn't have it in special education children or for general education children. The problem here is that the mayor says it over and over and over and over again, and sort of perception becomes reality. People hear it enough and they think it's true, but it's not true. He talks about the costs. He says costs are skyrocketing. Let's be clear on certain things. The average wage for a school bus driver is $34,000 a year. $34,000. They start out at $11 an hour, which is about $22,000.
Is that with benefits or without benefits?
That's without. I believe that's without benefits. But here's the thing. Pensions, they're private sector workers, so they're not public pensions. The general public is not paying for the pensions. They can't use that argument. So we're talking about men and women who we entrust to take care of our children each and every day, take them to school and back to school, making sure that they're the most experienced and well-trained workers. And the mayor is talking about that, A, it's illegal, which it's not. And second, he's talking about costs. Well, it's not the costs of the workers, certainly their salaries. The fact of the matter is that he talks about rising costs over the last 80 years. Well, after the last 30 years, well, all costs have gone up. The fact of the matter is, take a look at the toll bridge at Triborough Bridge 30 years ago was 75 cents. I think it's $6.50 now. At least. You talk about rising gasoline costs. There are now 25% more students taking these buses today than there were 30 years ago. 25% more. And there are 400% more bus routes than there were 30 years ago.
400%?
Yes. It went from like 1,700 to over 7,000 different bus routes. We have bus routes going from the city to outside into the suburbs, taking children into Westchester and Long Island because they're city students, so technically they have to go on these buses contracted by the city. So you have these students going you have buses that have 6 or 10 children on it. Now, look, we want these children to get to school. We want them to get to school safely. But it's the mayor that's bringing up these costs and all these other ancillary issues that are really not accurate. And he has the bully pulpit. He's out there. And the fact of the matter is, this is not about wages and benefits for these workers. Everybody thinks about strike, it's about wages and benefits. No, this is about making sure that the most responsible and skilled workers and experienced workers are on the job. And keeping in mind that when the union fights for this, it's not as if they're guaranteed that their members are going to get to work. And that's a message that I think that has to get out there a little more. And it's a shame that the mayor continues to say this over and over again. He manufactured this crisis, and he could stop it tomorrow if he wants.
I think you're getting the message out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237 Teamsters. With me, our special guest is President of the AFL-CIO, Mario Cilento, and we're talking about the school bus strike. Now, I want to shift gears for a second. We have a second crisis here. New York City is estimated to lose about maybe $250 million to $400 million in state aid because the UFT and the mayor couldn't negotiate an agreement on teacher evaluations. Where do you see that?
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, obviously, I'm not part of the negotiations, but we certainly speak often with the president of the UFT, Mike Mulgrew. And here's the thing. Again, the mayor, it's a crisis of leadership on the mayor's part. He could have come to an agreement. He didn't want to come to an agreement for whatever reason. I can only go by the news reports and what we see, but it seemed as though they had an agreement, and at the last minute, the mayor came away and backed away from it. The fact is, he couldn't come to an agreement with the teachers. He's not willing to come to an agreement with the school bus drivers. You can see here where it seems as though the mayor has an agenda, and that is he's an anti-labor agenda, an anti-working men and women agenda,
and both in schools,
and in fact, the children suffer, and he wanted to call himself the education mayor. Well, it defies logic that if you want to be considered the children's mayor, that you would disadvantage them, A, by putting them in harm's way with inexperienced school drivers down the line, and 2, giving up $240 million that would come into the city of New York to take care of the schools and those children. It defies logic, and unfortunately he seems to have his own agenda, and it's to the detriment of our school children.
You're listening to Reaching Out with Greg Floyd, and this segment we had Mario Cilento, who is the president of the New York State AFL-CIO. Mario, thank you for coming on.
Greg, thank you. I really appreciate it.